for this task, you should have 2 documents for task E. This one that's a grid is going to be on colored paper, and this one is on white paper because you're going to highlight and do some annotating on it. Make sure that when you are done with this, you turn this paper in for your completion grade. I'm going to caution you, you're going to need scissors and glue for this, so make sure you keep your workspace clean so you don't have a lot to clean up, and make sure as you watch me do this, you only use little dots of glue. Okay, so let's do a quick review. What makes, oh, and of course make sure that you put your name on your paper so that you get credit for it, so do that right now. So let's do a quick review of types of sentences and what we are going to look for when we're sorting these sentences. A simple sentence is going to have one subject and a verb, and it might have prepositional phrases and infinitives and things like that. So we're going to get rid of those things before we try to identify them. The next type of sentence is a compound sentence, and I'm going to put this as a number 1. This is what I would look for first, because for the types of sentences that we're going to be looking for, they're all going to have a comma with a coordinating conjunction and a subject and a verb on both sides. So if you don't see the comma and the coordinating conjunction, you can rule out compound sentence right away. I feel like that's an easier one to rule out. Now we do know that if you see a comma conjunction, it could be used as a list, so we do have to make sure to find, is there a subject and a verb on both sides. After I've looked for compound sentences, then I would look for a complex sentence. And if I have a complex sentence, then I'm going to have a dependent clause in there somewhere. I'm going to have a subordinating conjunction followed by a subject and a verb. And I'm going to show that by underlining it. So what I would like for you to do before you get started on this is flip your paper to the back, and I want you to write subordinating conjunctions and brainstorm as many as you can think of. We want to get to the point where these are a little bit more automatic, like prepositional phrases where we can just find them in a sentence. We've got that mnemonic, AWUBIS, that can help us remember some of them, but there are more than, we have some that start with a T and some that start with other letters. So brainstorm when you're done, get your notebook out and double check, add any to it that you might have forgotten. All right, and so then for your actual task, I'm going to show you what I would do. What I might do first is cut around the outside so that I have just the sentences to look at. So what you'll have is this outline cut and then just the sentences in the middle. This should save you from having a lot of extra garbage to dispose of. So we're going to use the markings we've done in class to identify whether the sentence is simple, compound, or complex. So I'm going to do 2 with you, and then you will finish this on your own. So I'm going to pick sentence right at the beginning. It says, thousands more fled to the regions of Eastern Europe where they could be relatively safe from the mobs in the cities. So the first thing I would do is look for prepositional phrases or infinitives. I see 2 here. It doesn't have a verb, so I know it's a prepositional phrase. So I'm going to highlight it. I see of Eastern Europe. I see from the mobs, and in the cities. So now I'm left with thousands more fled where they could be relatively safe. So I'm going to first look to see, is the sentence compound? Do I see a comma and a conjunction in there? And I do not. I know right away this is not going to be a compound sentence. So now I'm going to go look to see, is it complex? Do I see a word in here that's a subordinating conjunction? And I see this WH word. I'm going to double check it on my list, and it is. So I'm going to put a box around it. And then my clause would be where they could be relatively safe. Now, to make sure that it's a dependent clause, I've got to find a subject and a verb. Now, I know that be is a verb. So now I can ask myself, who could be relatively safe? They could be relatively safe. And so since I found a dependent clause that has a subject and a verb after it, then I know that this sentence is complex. I'm going to cut just this sentence out. Again, I would not cut all of the sentences out, because if you lose them and you don't finish this during class time, you might have a little bit of trouble keeping track of them. And then what I would do is just put a little teeny tiny dot of glue. Don't put too much glue on here so that that's all you need. Look at that. And then I'm going to glue that in complex sentence. And you'll see that if I use a little bit of glue, it's not going to spill out around the outside. All right, so now I want to try the sentence right next to it. Let's look at this one. Most of the sailors aboard the ships were dead, and those still alive were gravely ill. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to first look for my phrases. I see of the sailors. Aboard is not one of ours, but I can tell aboard what? Aboard the ships. That looks like a prepositional phrase as well, because it's showing where they are. So I'm left with most were dead, and those still alive were gravely ill. So I'm going to start by looking to see, do I have a compound sentence? I'm going to look to see, is there a comma conjunction? And there is, so I'm going to circle it and label it CC. Now, just because I found that doesn't mean it's compound. I'm going to look to see, is there a subject and a verb on both sides? Most were dead. Now, if I had not gotten rid of that prepositional phrase, I would probably think that sailors is the subject, but it can't be because it's in a prepositional phrase. So most is my subject and were is my verb. So I've got one independent clause.